Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's Morning Coffee or Tea with AmericanScouser.com. I'm your host, as always, Grab, back to being the greatest dad. I was the greatest dad. I had to drive Layla to school this morning because there's a shitload of snow over here in Chicago. And with us is we had Polish Prince Mondays, and now we have Egyptian King Wednesdays. Rami is with us. Rami, what's happening, man?
What's up, Timuchin? Happy to be here. It's been a little while, so it's
It's
good to
been
be
a
back.
while, right? I missed this
Yeah,
morning. Even when the music was playing just now, I was like, man, I kind of missed this. Alan is
yeah.
with us as well, so we got everyone we need to move on further. Good morning, Alan. Yeah, so bunch of like weird headlines to get to. Some of them will focus on more obviously than others. But let's start. Alan says snow. What snow? Alan says this in Houston, like they don't know snow, but then they get like a dusting and life stops over there because they're not used to that shit. But yeah, it's one of those snows today though that is like a pretty snow. Like I don't even know when the hell this
Mhm.
thing came down because there was nothing last night. You wake up this morning, there's a ton, but it's like soft, like nice, peaceful snow. Of course, now you drive over it and it turns to shit, but it is what it is. So let's start with this. Basically, this being the Everton misery that we all enjoy. So obviously, my boy Fat Frank got canned. They're looking for a new manager, and I don't know. So let me ask you. I guess let's start with this because we were talking about this on the Discord channel yesterday about this whole ordeal with Donnarumma, like not actually going there. Um, and he had the physical done and all that kind of good stuff, but then they were almost sounds like they were stalling him. My theory was they were like my initial theory, I should say, that sparked in my brain was well, they don't have the manager, they don't want to get a guy, maybe the new manager is gonna say, with limited funds the way it is, I mean the situation they're in. They didn't want to commit to a guy, then the new guy comes in and says, well, I didn't fucking want him. And you guys should have gotten this or something like that instead. So I thought they were maybe stalling him, but that was my initial thought. But the more you think about it, I mean, you're not gonna stall a guy for like a week or 10 days because you don't have anything brewing right now in managers, just a bunch of names thrown around. What do you think went down over here, or did they just have a change of heart after the physical?
Yeah. That was actually my initial reaction too. I thought, just with the timing of Frank Lampard getting fired and then this news coming out, it felt like those two things were related. But like I said, I don't know how long they expect it to stall, especially with other teams interested. So I don't know. We're talking about Everton here at the end of the day, and I don't think they've ever done the right thing. So it's also a good reminder to Liverpool fans that it's like, yeah, it might be bad, but somebody else always has it worse. So so yeah, I just couldn't help but think that the whole time. It's like, yeah, thank God I'm not cheering for Everton or supporting Everton. It's just kind of like that just seems like a miserable existence right now. Yeah, between that and then getting rejected by Bielsa and like just the ownership situation and all of that, it just seems really like not a fun time right now over there.
Yeah, I mean, the word yesterday was they're up for sale, which I mean it's only 500 million people. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you can put together something going over here and.
get a GoFundMe.
Hon- Honestly, if they were not in the situation they are, they were like 14th or something. That's a pretty
Hmm.
good deal for a Premier club. Like it's Everton's history and stuff like that. You could snatch that up maybe, but um, I mean, who wants to invest? It's like most like what give me like a terrible scenario kind of thing, and this is what you would probably give. It's probably the worst time to sell because you have the risk of going down to the championship like very soon over here. By the time the paperwork is signed, you might be in the championship. You have wages that you can't afford with championships that you will have to dump. You already have a team. I mean, I don't even know, especially if they lose some of their top players, which we were talking with, on the Monday podcast with Galley and Bickler. I don't know if they could even win in the championship. Like it's that kind of a situation right there. Alan says Ronaldo could afford it. To be fair, Ronaldo could probably afford the Premier League or something like that. So that doesn't really narrow it down. I was more like maybe if you put our really minds together and some financing, loans, bankers, we could all afford it together. But then what would we do with it? We just wanted to bring it down anyway, so that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the manager situation. The whole Bielsa thing that I heard the same thing that Bielsa was like, thanks but no thanks. because I feel like, I mean, Sean Douchebag is the next name. I think that has been talked about. There's Duncan over there, always waiting. Um, Trevor says, "I'm not even on the show, and I can't escape Ronaldo." He's his favorites. By the way, yeah, shout out to Trevor and his plants in the background and the cans, by the way. I have not seen those in a while, but he'll be on the podcast with you actually tomorrow night, with Mecca hosting the festivities. But so let's go back to the manager thing. This is not a good job. If you're a manager of stature, why would you want to take this job?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I was thinking like a manager like Sean Dyche or Sam Allardyce, somebody who really doesn't care about the reputation, would be a perfect fit. Because if you go down, that's kind of what's expected with that squad. And like you said, there's not. It's kind of like as a manager, it's lose-lose. Even if you keep them up, the fans aren't going to be happy because it's like, oh, why were we even in a relegation battle to begin with? And then if you go down, then that's the worst case scenario. So yeah, you're 100% correct. Like and that squad doesn't look like they have enough talent to even turn it around, and the players they're trying to sign don't even want to sign for them, and it doesn't seem like it like I said, no matter what, if you're a manager going in, it just seems like a lose-lose situation all around.
See, for Sam, it's like, this is what I do, he comes in, he's like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you stay up, sometimes you don't. But I can understand that. But like, especially for like Sean Dyche, I mean, you would think he would be up for another job in the Premier League if he just waited. Like next season, somebody who barely made it might be like, hey, we need a fresh start. I don't know, let's say Bournemouth or somebody survives. They might say, let's bring somebody who has Premier League experience. I mean, he kept Burnley up there. And as much as I hate him and the football he plays and stuff, he, within limited funds and resources, he made that team stay in the Premier League for an extended time, which is more than enough for a lot of the owners because minimal investments and being in the Premier League kind of thing. So you would think he would have other more appealing job offers. Sam, yeah, I can see Sam because he's like, I don't care, I'll do it, whatever kind of a deal. So, but let me ask you this. So Lampard, as much as I can't stand him and his fatness, do you think instead of Frank, let's put Sean over there, would they be in a better situation than they are now? So is it the team or is it the manager?
Yes and no. I think they'd still be in a relegation dogfight either way. I think they'd still be like maybe, what are they now, 19th and maybe like 18th or 17th. But you're 100% at the end of the day. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's the players who go out there and play. It doesn't really matter what coach you have if you just don't have the talent. And you just kind of watch their games and they just look very average. You know what I mean? They look like a championship team. I'm not gonna lie to you, like a second division team. So, at the end of the day, the coach can make a difference, and bringing a new manager might give them like that little bit of a bounce for the first maybe 5 or 6 games, and that might be enough for them to survive. So, maybe they're banking on that, but at the end of the day, it is about who's on the field, those 11 on the pitch, and if they're not good enough, then there's nothing you can really do about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I agree. I think if it was, I was going to be a bit more generous. I would say 15, 16 or something like that. If they had somebody like Sean from the beginning or another man, I'm not saying Bielsa because unless you got, I mean, here's another thing. This is a team that is, Bielsa is the kind of guy that comes in and, he's like that teacher goes into the hood and like cleans up the classroom. Like he's that kind of a dude, like a bad movie scene, like where he's like kind of like in the beginning they hate him, but at the end they all loved him. So he's gonna like make him practice 2 or 3 times a day and like run like crazy, and have games that are probably like 5-3 and 7-0 and stuff like that. I mean, but you would think somebody like Sean would be able to gather more points along the way, snatch a couple of wins by just defensively holding that team better. And honestly, like they have not been terrible defensively. They've only conceded 28 goals. It's just they cannot score goals. They're at 15 and making. I mean, Wolves is at 12 goals, which I mean that's abysmal as well. Like 20 games, 12 goals is pretty lame. And then Everton is at 15, and they have like the least number of wins in the league. They have 3 wins, 6 draws, 11 losses out of the 20 games. And yeah, it feels like it's not going to get better anytime soon based on how things are going. But that's what makes it so much fun at the same time. So more power to them. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. We have another, week left over here?
Yeah.
I mean, if they can like, I mean, this says Spurs. The headline says Spurs hijack Everton loan. I don't know if they can go literally hijack a player or something like that to Liverpool and have it like, yeah, you're going to Liverpool, and we're like, oh, but it was Everton and stuff, and like make him sign in the last second. I don't know. That's the only way it feels like they're gonna get somebody over there. So
Yeah.
okay, here's another interesting topic right here. Let's get your take on this. Some international flavor. So Zendejas, I'm assuming is, I think I pronounced that pretty darn good actually.
Mhm.
But let's go with that. Zendejas, non-committal. I honestly don't know the player, so
Yeah.
I just caught the headline. So I wanted to ask you about this. We talked about this in the past, actually in the Discord channel. I think Megan and I were talking about this in terms of players committing to national teams. So it says he hasn't closed the door to Mexico despite accepting a first call up for the U.S. men's national team this month. As somebody, who is international, I guess, like us, how do you approach that? Like, do you want somebody like this? Okay, let's put it in our perspective, right? Like Turkish, Egyptian. Do you want somebody like this saying, like, going to the U.S. national team, but then winking at the Egyptian national team, and at the same time, I'd be like, you know what? You don't know. I might be back there. You don't know. I could feel the Egyptian right about now, kind of a deal. How do you take that? And would you like welcome a guy like that when he comes over?
Well, it's always depend on how good he actually is. That's always, that always hides everything.
Ah, so if
'Cause if he's
Ronaldo was Egyptian,
yeah, exactly. Or Messi or something, we'd be like, okay, we make some exceptions, but yeah, at the end of the day, you want people who want to play for you, and like I always talk about that. It's like if I was good enough to be a professional football player, who would I play for? And to be honest, and I think this is the decision a lot of players make. It's whoever I'm going to play more with. So if the American national team, there's not really a path there in my position, then I'll go play for Egypt and probably get more playing time, or vice versa.
really,
Um,
see, that's interesting. Like
yeah.
I would only play for the Turkish national team, but then
Well,
again, they were like, I mean, here's the thing though. Now we're like, sitting back on a freaking Wednesday morning over you're
yeah.
speculating if they ask for the national team. So the situation might be different when the question is asked. But
Uh-huh.
I feel like if they said, hey, you can pick either one, I don't think I would even think I would pick the Turkish national team. Because, okay, let me ask you this though. Like, would you have the same kind of pride
Mhm.
playing for the national team when you line up before the game and the national anthems are playing? Would the amount of pride you feel as you stand over there hearing the national anthem as an Egyptian or as an American be the same?
I would say no, to be frank. I would think that it'd be more as an Egyptian, just because that's more like my culture and my heritage. You know what I mean? Not to say like I'm not an American as well. I was born and raised here, but like ethnically, the language I speak, all of that, that's my people. And so I would feel a bit more pride, with the Egyptian national team. But I mean, like I said, I feel like for a lot of these players, at the end of the day, it just comes down to playing time and which team gives them the path forward. I always laugh at Aymeric Laporte, how he was French his whole life, and then once he realized that he wasn't going to get into the national team, found out that he had Spanish grandmother or whatever it was, or mother or something like that, and then switched to the Spanish national team. And so that always those such situations always make me laugh, because it's like, okay, yeah, I can't get into either of these teams. Let me go see if my great grandfather was from a different national team, and see if I can get in there. Yeah, so it's always
Let's
fun.
do a DNA test. There has to be somebody
Yeah.
personally in somewhere. Like
Exactly. Yeah. Somebody along the way played. Is from a national team that's not great, and so I can go play
yeah, I
for them.
think
But
it's
yeah.
slightly different for you because you were born here as well. I mean,
Hmm.
like say I came here for college, so like born and raised more in Istanbul, Turkey, and then came
Right.
like a couple of years in London. Then I've been here since. So now, actually, we were just talking about this with my brother. I've been here in America longer than actually I've been home. I'm that fucking old now, where
Wow.
it has flipped the other way.
Hmm.
But still, I think, yeah, I mean, I would line up and play. But
Yeah.
when the national anthem plays, I don't think I'm gonna be there more to play, like you're saying. But I don't know, like if an American would want that. Definitely
Right.
not fucking me. But I mean, even if I was real good and to be, like playing there, I don't know as like an American would want, or as a Turkish person I would want. I mean, for the longest time, Turkey kind of stood against. There were players. I don't know, like when you have this. I mean, growing up, you could only have 3 foreign players play, for example.
Hmm.
Now it's like freaking ridiculous. Like they're like, I see starting 11s, nobody's Turkish. I don't know what the new rules are, but whatever. But in the past it was like 3 or 5 or whatever. So what they would do is, if somebody was in the country for like, if in the Turkish league for 5 seasons or whatever it was, they could become Turkish, passport wise, so they could actually play as a Turkish player, so you can get another foreign player or whatever. But the bottom line is, those guys therefore now became eligible for the national team. And for the longest time, Turkey kind of fought that, because people did not want those guys actually playing,
Right.
until, like you said, like Aurelio, who was Brazilian, and like he was in the top Fenerbahce teams, like a defensive midfielder, the team that went to the semifinals in the Champions League and stuff. He became Turkish. He became Mehmet Aurelio, which is like the worst freaking combination of all time. And then he was on the national team. Didier Six actually was another player that became Turkish and then played for the national team. I don't know. Like, so you have no trouble though rooting for someone that could not care less.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways, because, like you said, it kind of feels like a mercenary at that point when you have a Brazilian on the Turkish national team. Like, it's like that kind of defeats the purpose of international football. But that being said, if you look at like the American national team for the World Cup, you have a bunch of like children of immigrants or expats or whatever. Like Serginho Dest, I believe, was born in the Netherlands and lived a lot of his life in the Netherlands and could have represented them. Timothy Weah is Liberian as well. There's a few players like that. Yunus Musa is English and American. So yeah, there's a few players like that where they could represent dual nationalities, and I think I don't think that made them any less of an American national team player. I think people supported them just the same. But yeah, like you said, you can't help but have that like little bit in the back of your mind that's kind of like, oh, this feels like kind of like a mercenary type thing. Like I was looking at, like, Qatar is a great example of it. They do this a lot. They set up academies and then have players come there when they're like 16 or 17 and then live there when they're young, and then give them the Qatari citizenship so they can play for the national team. So it's like I said, it kind of defeats the purpose of international football at that point. It might as well just be club football if we're gonna keep it that way.
And I feel like, that's what it is. It becomes club football. So you go to the club that you feel like you're going to get more playing time. And there's like a lot of examples. And obviously every situation is a little different. But when you see something like this, I think this is like what bothered me the most, is the quote that he's like, he accepted the US one, but then he's leaving the door open for the Mexico one too. He's like, if I don't really like it over here, I might come back. You never know. I'm just gonna go see if dinner is not good. Like, are you gonna be home for dinner? Like, I'll be there, but if they don't have good food, yeah, I'll eat at home, kind of a deal. Like, the shit doesn't work like that. At least comment. I think the discussion we had on the Discord channel back at the time, this was like a month or so ago. I think we were talking with like Megan and a couple of others, in terms of when they should have to declare, like in terms of age, like can they do U21 but then U23, blah blah blah, like when they should call it, kind of a thing. But I still feel like 18 you should call it, or 21 at the most, like U21. Once you're done with U21, you freaking better know. I would say 18, but I'll give you 21 too. But yeah, it's kind of like one of those weird ordeals where it just doesn't feel like. I think mercenary was a good word. I think to me it just becomes that. But while we're talking about the international thing over here, I had never heard of this, and you brought it to light over here. So let's show this, because I don't know. I will be interested to know, like, people who are listening live right now or listening afterwards know about this, because all these years in the game, I did not. So this is African Nations Championship that's going on right now, right? And well, tell us a bit about it. So it's basically the African Cup, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But only with players who are playing their club football in Africa.
Correct. Yeah. It's a biannual tournament. It's been going on since, I believe, 2009. But it's officially sanctioned by FIFA. The wins and losses count towards your FIFA rankings, and so it's an officially sanctioned tournament. But yeah, it's like you said, it's only, the player pool is only allowed players playing in domestic leagues in Africa, and so it's very interesting. You always get smaller nations get to go on these runs. Like right now, it's the quarterfinals, and you have a country like Niger or Mauritania, who really on the world stage don't ever get recognized, but because their domestic league, their national team is basically already made up of local players anyways. So this is basically their national team that's playing in it. And so, they get that little bit of recognition. it's always interesting though. It's kind of basically a competition of who has the best domestic league at the end of the day. So you kind of have like the bigger nations, like the North African teams, or sometimes South Africa or whatever. But I mean, the DR Congo is not the biggest nation football wise, but they've won it twice. And so it's like I said, just always interesting to see these small nations who never really get recognition on the global stage, that they have their opportunity too, and these local players get a chance to represent their countries as well.
Does it mean more to the people or less, or just
I mean,
because
to be honest,
I know, like I say, like when I was working in Chicago, I was working with a lot of people. Like I had like 2-3 people in the store that were from Nigeria, so we always talk soccer and stuff. And I know, like they were telling me, there's at times resentments. I mean, this was, I guess, specifically for Nigeria. I don't know if it's like across the board, but like from fans. Well, actually, I guess across the board, because when you watch the Mane documentary, you can see people from Senegal almost like the same sentiment that they play or harder or better for their club than they do for their national team. Blah blah blah. So does this mean more to the people? Like, do they like support the players more or anything like that, or is it just about?
I think it's because honestly, a few years ago, it was just a friendly tournament. It was kind of like the Nations League, like the UEFA Nations League, and so very recently became recognized by FIFA. But I think since then, a lot of people's perception of it has changed. They're like, "Oh, this is a competition recognized by FIFA. We want to win a trophy." And like I said, for these smaller countries, this might be their only chance to do so. And so that's those are the people who really support. Like if you look at like Egypt didn't even qualify. We didn't even go to qualify. We just pulled out. Some other teams, Morocco was eliminated early. So like the names you would recognize in Africa don't take it as seriously, but it's for those small countries that like, yeah, you really they love it because it's like this is the only chance to ever really win a trophy on the international stage.
That's crazy.
So,
yeah, I mean, I almost felt like it would be. Alan says if England played the winner of that Africa Cup, they'd lose. Southgate would park the bus against that team. I mean, yeah, I that's what I wonder. Like, if people felt more like this is our people, because I know while it's their best players that go to Europe, there's like always that, and I think it's more paranoia than anything else. It's not like mine worse for them. I think it's more paranoia because here's the thing: like, Mane is not playing worse for your country. He's playing with Bobby and Mo.
Players,
and he's not, what I mean? So I don't think it's fair, but I know it's something that they get. So let's talk about this over here. You sent me this actually like yesterday. Let's share it, I guess. So NBC says Arsenal's 3-2 win over Manchester United on Sunday is the most watched Premier League match in U.S. history with 1.92 million viewers across NBC. And that doesn't include me because I didn't watch it. And Peacock and NBC Sports, which was the game was on Peacock only, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess Telemundo had 382,000 viewers. So let's start with just this information. What do you make of it? Does that basically show? I don't think it shows anything about the clubs. It was the big game on that day. Does it show more about the sport getting bigger and bigger? So like next week, there's going to be another game that's going to be 2 million.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was my take on it. I feel like you could have substituted any two teams, like any two big Premier League teams, and could have gotten similar viewing results. I just think the World Cup has done a lot for football here in the United States, especially that World Cup final, in my opinion. I think a lot of people see the parallels between like the Super Bowl and the World Cup final, and I think for Americans, that was like a very easy parallel to make. And I think like the way the game turned out, like the 3-3 and penalties, and I always say Mbappe is the perfect superstar for Americans because, players like Messi or Modric or something have a little bit more like subtle skill, a little bit of, nuance to their game. But Mbappe is very clear. Anybody can watch and see that that's, just the raw athleticism and pace that's I just think that appeals to American viewers a lot. And so just watching that World Cup and the way it ended, I think there's a bit of a void there that's left. And because it's still the middle of the Premier League season, I think a lot of people just kind of picked up where they left off and just started watching the Premier League. Like I have friends who, big American football guys, like macho, whatever, like, oh, I hate soccer. Now started hitting me up being like, oh, maybe it's not that bad. Like maybe I can actually get into it. So that's, I've definitely noticed a shift a little bit in the mindset of the American population when it comes to football. And so when you see numbers like this, it's really promising that, it's a random 20 game match week 21 in January between United and Arsenal is getting these types of numbers.
Yeah, so you look at the numbers, you're like, hey, that's not
Mhm.
too shabby, right? And then and then somebody tweets underneath that it was 45 million for the Cowboys versus 49ers game, which granted it's a playoff
Yeah.
game and it was on the Sunday nights. They made that the game pretty much, and it
Mhm.
was, and freaking 49ers beat Dallas again.
Yeah, congrats on
So,
that.
yeah, which is always nice. And
Yeah.
I noticed, by the way, as I watched that game, I'm like, this is like watching football as a fan, American football as a fan, is a different burn compared
Mhm.
to watching soccer as a fan. Because first of all, it takes forever. It's like a 3 hour fucking torture instead of just like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then there's so many breaks that if you're, I mean, I watch games a lot more nervously than most, probably. So it's like all these freaking commercial breaks really don't help me at all. I mean, my doctor would not approve me probably watching a football game, but still, it is what it is. But yeah, so 1.92. So what did I say? 45.
42 or 45? Yeah.
So not even 2 to 45 million. So obviously
Yeah.
a long way to go.
Mhm.
When do you think? I'm not going to say if ever, because eventually it will be. But like, when do you think? I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think it'll ever be 45 million. But when do you think, for example, it will be 5 million for I don't know, like a Liverpool City game or whatever? Like I say, I think you're right.
I
I don't
guess.
think the clubs make a difference. I don't think anybody is like, oh,
Yeah.
Arsenal is on. It's just more like,
Yeah.
oh, this is like a big time game for Premier League. Let's see what's going on, kind of deal.
My guess is by the 2026 World Cup. I think with the United States hosting it, this isn't just like a one-time burst. I think it's going to continue to grow, and people are going to start put their kids into soccer. I think there's also a shift happening with people getting away from American football. Yeah, people still watch it on TV, but not as many people are playing it with the safety concerns. So when you have this next generation who didn't really play the sport, or like maybe played soccer or basketball growing up, they're going to want to watch those sports more. So I think you're going to notice a shift within the next 5 years, and then after the World Cup that's hosted here, I think it's really going to boom, and I think you'll start to see numbers like 8 or 10 million by the end of the decade. That's at least my, maybe a best hope or best guess, but yeah, I don't know.
I'll go with hope.
Hope, yeah, I think that's a better way to put it. My thing is, I think there's so much untapped potential here when it comes to football, and I just would like to see that realized. Whether that happens or not is just at the end of the day, it really comes down to money, if we're being honest. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
And I think that's the biggest problem that I see. 5 is up. So you're saying it's going to go up almost like 2.5 times in 4 years, in 3 years over here, not even 4 years. Yeah, that's kind of optimistic. Honestly, I could have seen it if maybe US advanced a bit more and there was like even a bigger, higher expectation for this World Cup. But I mean, the mess, which we'll probably get into that more on like Friday. God, I mean, any day we can pick a headline from the U.S. national team and like talk about it.
Yeah.
So, but I think like the whole drama, blah blah blah, is kind of like taken away. Whereas if they beat Netherlands, for example, and then lost in the next round, I still think it would have been a bigger expectation. Next thing is big up, but then you lose. And then you come back, all this drama is happening. This guy is getting canned. That guy's mom is calling this guy. It's just like so much like really bad, poor, like teenage club drama going on in the national scale.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like my daughter's played, and this is the kind of shit that happens in like a U14 team where mom emails and says, "How come Abby's not playing more?" or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like like so. Yeah, it's kind of like an odd deal, but I think it would. I hope it increases. The thing that worries me about is the money thing you're talking about. You watch that football game that these 45 million people are watching over here. So many goddamn commercials, so many goddamn sponsors. And for 3.5 hours, it's like, like Fox is like, yeah, keep them coming. Whereas an hour and a half, you can't really stop the game. So really, it's 15 minutes in the middle that you can jam all the commercials in, is what it feels like. Or let me ask you this, and this is a scary thought. will the American media find ways to insert? They already have. I see it here and there. Like I feel like the Mexican TV channels, especially. First of all, their players are going around like freaking NASCAR drivers. There's like 85 logos on them, so this is pretty much gonna probably happen.
Yeah,
I'm
pretty
amazed. Like Europe has not seen them. They're like, holy shit, look at these guys! Like they're going on with like different like logos. But they make the
Mhm.
screen smaller, or the soccer only goes to the corner. Commercial comes up and stuff like that. Do you think stuff like that has to happen before the media kind of, because let's face it, especially in the US, people eat what the media feeds them. I guess this is all over the world,
Right.
perhaps, but I mean, in Europe, they don't have a chance because if they don't feed soccer, they're not going to get watched, so they don't really have a chance. But over here,
Yeah.
people eat what's served. For media to kind of focus on soccer more, do you think it's more about them being able to monetize it more somehow?
Hmm. Exactly that. I know. I think you're starting to see it with the involvement of Americans in the Premier League, like Todd Bowley or the guy who bought Bournemouth. You're just starting to see more and more Americans invest in the Premier League because they know that's where the money's at, and that's what concerns me is not necessarily the Americans themselves, but it's the history has taught us one thing: it's that American investors want to return, and so they're going to start to look for things like an All-Star game, like Todd Bowley suggested, or what worries me is they want to do 60-minute matches, but with a starting and stopping clock. And once you do that, you open up a can of worms that, oh, we can stop. If we can stop for 5 seconds, we can stop for a minute and show commercials. You know what I mean? Opens up a can of worms, and eventually, like even I remember during the during the COVID years, like when they came back right after Project Restart, or whatever, and they were doing those water breaks. I remember watching NBC and they showed an ad during the water break, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, oh, like this is what we're doing now. Like any break we can get, we're just going to show a commercial. So yeah, so I honestly think over time it's going to get to that point regardless.
Yeah, you're right. And that's what I worry about. Because here's the
Hmm.
thing. I mean, the purists, or like we like the game as is. We don't want it messed up. But when money is involved, this game has been modified a lot over the years for the sake of money. Yeah, I thought that's funny you mentioned that, because I thought the same thing when those water breaks were happening. Because before, like it, they were like, somebody's gonna be like, wait a second, these guys, I'm sure, get thirsty every game, and then like start
Yeah,
breaking it. Before you know it, they're like, why don't we just make quarters and stuff like that? And
yeah.
that's, I guess, my main concern. And sadly, while that would help boost up like the views, it would really screw up the game for me, because you don't want that. I mean, that's what I love about soccer, and that's what
Yeah.
or let me reverse that. I think that's probably what I don't like about US sports is, I mean,
Hmm.
especially with the invention of DVRs. Uh, I mean, not DVRs anymore, but I mean, like to be able to record games.
Yeah.
It's painful. I mean, I watch. That's probably the first games I watched in a long time, from beginning to end. Has been these like last 3, 4 49er games. I mean,
Yeah.
usually I start watching it, pause it, I'll go, play PlayStation or whatever I'm going to do. Come back, watch like 30 minutes, get caught up.
Right.
Especially in the game like football, where it's just like play,
Hmm.
play, play, commercial, and then you can be
Yeah.
caught up in like 10 minutes, what you missed like in an hour.
Exactly. Can really miss
So
much.
I
Yeah.
just don't want that to be. You can't do that in soccer, and that's what makes it beautiful. And
Hmm.
I think that's what makes it so painful to freaking watch the game. The players throw the ball back and forth on the touchline because the throw-in is sponsored by Samsung. And then Alan says, won't be long before an advertiser's name is on the ball itself. How the hell is it not? I guess is my question,
Yeah.
as much as they do. I feel like, if they're going to do, like, if they would start this shit, I'd be like, guys, 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 I have a better idea. Why don't we not fuck up the game?
Yeah.
And then, you guys want more money? Let's put a freaking Samsung logo on here.
Yeah. Put it on the
Let's
field. Who
put another
cares?
guy, logo on one of the guys' asses, whatever we're going to
Yeah.
do, but let's not mess up the game. But
Yeah. Oh,
but before we go, let me ask you real quick about the weekends. So get your take on it. And on Friday, Michael Martin is actually going to be joining me, so we'll probably like touch up a bit more about the weekend game there too. But how much of an importance are you putting to the FA Cup?
zero. I was fully
Really?
expecting us to lose the replay against Wolves. So when we won, I was like, okay, just another fixture congestion. But But yeah, no, I don't really put a ton of weight on it. I would like to see the kids play, if we're being honest. Give Bajcetic a start. Maybe Calvin Ramsey can play a game for us. We'll see. But yeah, just give the kids a run. It's Brighton. I feel like even if we played our starters, we lose. So just let the kids get some minutes, and I think our focus should fully be on getting top four, as unrealistic as that sounds at this point. And just let the cups. We'll worry about that next season.
Okay. That's fair. Like I say, we kind of like disagreed on this a little bit on the Monday podcast.
Yeah.
But Yali and I were more about um kind of like starting something and building the fact that we're not going to play for another week. I don't know if these guys, I want these guys idle for 2 weeks either,
True.
kind of a
Yeah.
thing. But I understand your guys' take because Bickler was more like you in terms of like who cares. Just from the Sparky Parky says, shame on you. It's the FA Cup. And that's what, and I was talking about this. I think we were talking about this on Monday's pod or whatever. But I feel like the importance of these cups are getting less and less because it's becoming a hindrance on some teams. But I know the FA Cup means a lot more, and it'll probably be more important down the line. I don't think it will fall in the pit that like the League Cup has fallen in, for example. Trevor says, "Have we rescued Calvin Ramsey from the place he had been kidnapped to yet?" I don't know. We're still negotiating, I think, because I don't know what happened to the kids. I know like he was hurt. I almost feel like maybe he came back too soon, and that either affected his play or his recovery or whatever. But promising like these young kids, you just got to give them some time before you kind of like make the judgments on them, and we'll see.
He's been playing with the U23s.
Yes, so I don't. Maybe that's the only
Yeah.
feeling I got is like he was not ready, either for the abuse of the Premier League or
Maybe, yeah.
not ready overall, like physicality wise. And they were like, "Why don't you start there?" Because I think, I'm sure he's not like taking it easy, but I think it's a lot easier to control your minutes and your pace and your physicality as like U23s or whatever, as opposed to like being thrown the Premier League and you got to go full blast for 90 minutes. So that'll be interesting to see. I can go for that. I just want something to build on. But of course, the flip side of that is, which we talked about, is if they go all out and then still lose. And I think the fact that it's Brighton kind of like worries me too, because a team that plays well and team kind of has our number in terms of scoring on us more than anything else. And we're at a stage where we can't win shootouts at the moment. It's looking like until the boys are back, like Diaz, Jota, and Bobby and stuff like that. Shootout is not the way to go for us right now. 2-1, 1-0 is the way to go. But Rami, thanks a lot, man. We'll see you again. We'll see you again tomorrow night which is our next show right here with Trevor, Mr. Ronaldo's #1 fan, and his dying plant in the background, joining you, hosted by Mecca tomorrow night. I'm sure you guys will talk a lot about the FA Cup game there as well. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. I'll see you guys back Friday morning over here. Take care. We'll see you guys.
Thank you.